Today I'm taking a look at the all-new Spider-Man the Animated Series Vulture 2-pack by Hasbro, and don't worry, I've got a whole web's worth of head swaps. Welcome to 5 Points of Articulation. Starting with the packaging, and even though I hate windowless boxes, I do really enjoy these. I just love the gimmick of making them look like old VHS boxes, right down to the mock VHS logo. Lining them up on a shelf, and it is a pretty cool effect. More of that classic Toy Biz flair on the opposite spine, and Toy Biz style product shots on the back. I know I'm just caving into a gimmick, but for packaging, I'm giving Spider-Man vs. Vulture 5 points. Moving on to presentation, and Spidey stands at just over 6 1/4 inches, or 16 centimeters, while Vulture looms large at 6 1/2 inches, or about 17 centimeters. Unlike the Walmart exclusive animated Spider-Man, which was built off the Amazing Friends body, this one's been made using the Sunfire body mold. Over the years, there have been variations of Spider-Man made off of this body, but to my knowledge, this is the first time we've ever gotten a plain Jane standard Spidey using it. That said, it's worth noting that this is the updated version with the pinless joints. I love the bright, vibrant colors, and this time it's been painted very nicely. Little bit of misstain underneath the butterflies, but hey, it's a lot cleaner than my copy of Renew Your Vows. That said, there's a bit of chipping on the back logo, and that back logo has been given a black outline. In general though, as a basic Spidey, I'm very happy with this. That said, if I'm happy with Spider-Man, I am over the moon with this new Vulture. Like a lot of collectors, I've been wanting Hasbro to make an animated series style Vulture for years. The wings have been reused from the previous Vulture and also the Falcon, but there's lots of wonderful sculpted armor detail, and I love this pearlized lime green. One of the things that I really love is that the armor is actually sculpted into the body rather than being a floating piece. That would have been really annoying. As is, the only thing I find annoying is that the wings pop out, but we also have that same problem with other figures using these wings. If you don't have any intentions of taking them apart, of course, you could always super glue it. Topping it off is a fantastic head sculpt. I love the swoopy pompadour he has, but it's the 90s, so he also has a mullet. Questionable hairstyles aside, these figures look great and are spot-on representations of their animated looks. For presentation, I'm giving Spider-Man vs. the Vulture 5 points. Moving on to Poseability, and of course the question is always whether or not this figure can do whatever a spider can. That being the case, I am way more interested in seeing what this new Vulture can do. From the top, and both heads are on ball joints and disc swivels, which makes me very happy. I know it doesn't look as good, but for a character like Spider-Man, you really want that range looking up, preferably without it looking like his head's about to fall off. Even the Vulture's mullet doesn't get in the way of him looking up, which for a flying character is really important. And just look at how far down they can bury the chin. The trade-off is that you don't get the same level of tilt that you would with a dumbbell joint. Still, there's a little wobble. Moving down, and Spidey can raise his arm all the way up, while Adrian gets 90 degrees. Fortunately, the shoulder pauldrons are nice and flexible. That said, Spidey benefits from a forward and back butterfly joint, but both figures have bicep swivel, Vulture's range being a bit clipped by these wings. Additionally, both figures have pinless double-jointed elbows and swivel hinge wrists. Shifting to the torso, and both Peter and Toombs have an ab crunch and a waist swivel. This in contrast with most modern Spideys, which have diaphragm joints and reverse ab crunches. Admittedly, Spidey isn't getting much of an arch back. Vulture actually has him beat there, but for a flying character that makes sense. Both characters do, however, get a very nice crunch forward, and while the lack of diaphragm might mean that neither one can tilt, thanks to the waist swivel, both can twist. Below the waist swivel, both figures have ball-jointed hips. They can each kick 90 degrees, with Vulture having a slightly better split. Both figures have thigh cut, but Vulture's is very nicely hidden by these straps. Working our way down, both figures have pinless, double-jointed knees. I will warn that Spidey's is a bit stiff, and that while pulling down on it, I was actually tugging on the boot. That said, and while both figures have ankles that can hinge and pivot, Spidey benefits from boot cut. When it comes to Spider-Man articulation, figures like Renew Your Vows have kinda spoiled us. This figure might not have a diaphragm joint or toe articulation, but he is more posable than Pizza Spidey. Still, taking the whole set into account, and for Poseability, I'm giving Vulture and Spider-Man 4 points. Moving on to Playability, and this set actually includes some really fun pack-ins, especially with Spidey. Starting with the Vulture, and he comes preloaded with these grabby hands, but he also has a pair of fists. Not exactly exactly sure how he's landing a punch with those giant wings in the way, but I'm happy for the options. And speaking of options, he also comes with this old man head. Just look at that range. All the more reason to get rid of those mullets. As for Spider-Man, we have been looking at these web-slinging hands, but he also comes with a pair of fists. Unfortunately, we do not get a pair of wall crawlers this time. We do, however, get a pair of accessory-holding hands for this. A loose Spider-Man mask that Peter can hold in either hand. The only other Spidey in my collection to do that is Marvel Select. Of course, if Spidey's holding his mask, that can only mean one thing: unmasked Peter Parker head. It's the exact same sculpt as the Peter Parker figure, just maybe a little jaundiced. That's not all though. This figure comes with an additional head. Flash Thompson recreating the scene when he dressed up as Spider-Man and was kidnapped. Not counting things like Agent Venom, and to my knowledge, this is the first Flash Thompson we've ever gotten. The cool thing is that we have so many Spidey figures, you could just keep him as a Flash Thompson in your collection, and with that being the case, the limited articulation really isn't a problem. After all, Flash doesn't have spider powers. By the way, if you really want wall crawlers and have the Renew Your Vows 2-pack, those hands match up fine, though I'm sure you could use the wall crawlers from some other Spideys as well. Conversely, you can use the accessory holding hands on Renew Your Vows. For anyone wondering, by the way, they are actually slightly different than the ones that come with Amazing Fantasy 15, so hey, that means even more options. Even with some fun pack-ins though, playability is more than just accessories. It's also about how well your figures play with others. Starting with some other Spider-Man figures, and it only makes sense to begin with fellow mullet enthusiast Smythe. Otherwise, here's a Peter Parker to go with that Spider-Man, Mary Jane Watson to go with Spider-Man, and Aunt May who thinks that Spider-Man is dreadful. That said, and for some other people who aren't exactly Spidey's biggest fan, and here's the Green Goblin, Dr. Otto Octavius and his Vulture nudging tentacles, and the cell-shaded Venom. Otherwise, and for a few other relevant retro cards, and here's Scorpion, Dr. Kurt Connors the Lizard, the Rampaging Rhino, Wilson Fisk the Kingpin of Crime, and Shocker! Shocker! Joking aside, and I do want to bring out the comic-style Vulture. For those curious, here's the comic head on the animated series body. If you wanted to do it, the skin tones unfortunately do not match, though if you wanted to do it the other way, it's a little bit less noticeable, until you pull back anyway. Of course, for a relative scale comparison, here's Vulture and Spidey with Pizza Spidey and the Spectacular Spider-Man, and as always, here they are with Stealth Iron Man. Mullet Bros! Of course, I know what you're all waiting to see, head swaps. First up is the Hobgoblin Wave Pizza Spidey. At a glance, this works really well. The reds are a great match, but I will say that the head on this one's a bit glossier. Either way, on the shelf, I think it'll all balance out, especially if you're using this alternate head. Here, that smiling sliver of jaw breaks things up just enough. Other way around, I'm not sure if I like this as much. Although it's not major, I do feel like that difference in finish does stand out a bit more here. Also, this head just seems kinda big. Next up is Retro Card. This is a much better match than I expected. I might just be saying that because this is one of my favorite Spidey head sculpts, but the colors and the webs really match up nicely. That said, for those of you who prefer Spider-Man's eyes even narrower, there is also that alternate head. This one really hits me in the nostalgia. On the flip side though, this does not work. This head is just too bright, and the webs are spaced too far apart. And for whatever reason, it's also pretty loose. Another figure that uses Retro Spidey's head though is Ben Reilly. His red is slightly brighter. As such, this might look even better. In fact, I'd be willing to say that the animated head looks pretty good on this body. Leastways, the colors are a better match. And you know what? As long as we're talking about Ben Reilly, we might as well bring out this one. As somebody who doesn't love the head that comes with this Ben Reilly, I think this is a great combination. You get those larger eyes without going overboard. So as you can imagine, I don't really care for this. If you like it, more power to you. But like I always say, this just reminds me of an alien. Here we have Renew Your Vows. Not surprisingly, this looks great. If you were gonna marry yourself to one combo, I think this might be it. You see what I did there? Marry yourself. Renew Your Vows. One thing that's nice about Renew Your Vows is it comes with an alternate Peter Parker head. If you prefer a more comic style, this is a great match. On that note, and here's the animated head on the Renew Your Vows body. That larger logo somehow makes it look more cartoonish to me. In general, though, I don't really like the color scheme on this one and would probably stick with the Smythe 2-pack. It just occurred to me, though, that I forgot to show you the Peter Parker head on the previous figure, so here's Retro Card. If you like this head, I think it's fine. Not sure about Pizza Spidey, though. The Pizza Spidey body is a lot more languid and more Mark Bagley-esque, whereas animated Spider-Man is a bit stockier. Getting back to animated Spider-Man, and here's that head on the Renew Your Vows body. Not surprisingly, this is a great match. If you want your animated Spidey having a bit more range, this is a great combination. And then here we have Spider-Man from the Amazing Friends 3-pack. The colors and web lines are a great match, and in general this is a really cool design for the eyes, but I can't help but wonder if this head isn't maybe just a bit too small. Alternately, this head seems a bit big. That said, if you prefer these proportions for an animated Spidey, then you can't really go wrong here, unless of course you're willing to track down that Walmart exclusive version. Lastly, and for a fun little bonus, and here's the Gamerverse PlayStation version. For a different eye design, this actually is pretty cool. The colors aren't a perfect match, but close enough, and these two figures were built off the same body, so proportion-wise it works out really well. Other way around though, and I do like this a bit better. The eyes just feel more right to me, but one of these days I would really like to get the updated one. If you're curious about the Peter Parker head though, here you go. I can't help but wonder if we'll ever get the video game version of him. Between the head swap potential, fun accessories, and technically a bonus third character for playability, I'm giving this 2-pack 5 points. This leaves us nothing left to discuss but the price. Is this the best Marvel Legends Spider-Man Hasbro's ever made? That's a conversation for another day, and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. But regardless, this one is still a lot of fun. For me, the loose mask and the ability to get a Flash Thompson on this shelf is worth it. And that's to say nothing about how long I've been waiting for an animated series style Vulture. On that note, and having missed out on the Walmart version, I'm really thankful for a shot at getting an animated series style Spidey. If you like what you see, you can get it right now on HasbroPulse.com for $49.99, but don't wait too long. You don't want to be left scavenging the aftermarket. For price, I'm giving Spidey and Vulture 5 points, averaging out to a final total of 4.8 out of 5. For more Spider-Man videos, check out one of these, and until next time, play nice and have fun.